We just had another epic week of nuclear news. Let's dive right in. First up, price action. The Sprott Uranium Miners ETF was down 1.76%. And that's only because the broader stock market was down as well, 2.77%. So some outperformance on the week in the miners. Now, remember, we don't concern ourselves with short-term price action because it's absolutely meaningless. Unless you're trying to trade the moves, which you probably shouldn't be doing with uranium mining stock ETFs or with uranium mining stocks because of the lack of liquidity. They're for long-term investors, right? Who want that potential 100 multi-bagger X in theory. And so that's why we stay on top of the long-term fundamentals of this space. We had a development out for fusion, right? Fusion energy, there was a breakthrough. They were able to synthesize a reaction in like a split second of energy. And that's great for the future of humanity. But let's figure out pretty much all that matters to uranium investors. Can fusion dethrone nuclear fission, which requires uranium, anytime in the near future? Fusion power is still decades and billions of dollars away, even after this week's major scientific breakthrough. Tuesday's announcement of net power gain from a nuclear fusion reactor is a major scientific breakthrough. At the same time, it will be more than a decade until fusion is generating power for the electric grid. Between now and then, there will have to be numerous incremental technical breakthroughs and more money invested in the industry. So we're talking decades away. The nuclear renaissance is unfolding. And now, so let's stay on top of what's going on in this space and the reality of what is going on in the world in terms of energy, because that is really what matters, right? This is theoretical. This is in the future. This is decades away. Let's figure out what's going on now. UK and Western Europe in middle of a wind drought and a global stilling is coming. So this is just not ideal for wind energy. If you can have a global stilling of wind, right? You have to have reliable baseload energy. If you're picking between green energies, obviously nuclear power is the winner. And so in the midst of the global scramble for the densest, greenest, most powerful, sustainable energy, you have geopolitical supply disruptions. Gates-backed startup delays advanced nuclear reactor in Wyoming after loss of Russian HALEU fuel, as doing business with Russia is untenable, even without a U.S. embargo against Russian uranium imports. So they've invested all this money into this project. They refuse to use Russian uranium, and therefore they can't operate. That is how important Russian uranium is to the world. Without it, you can't operate. And that's why the US is investing heavily into uranium. Instead of relying on our adversaries like Russia for uranium, the United States must produce its own supply of advanced nuclear fuel, says Senator Brasso, who has introduced a bill to boost US domestic production. I talk about all the time how short-term price action is literally zero indicator of long-term bullish fundamentals, because you have stocks like Peninsula Energy and Energy Fuels who have news like this, and we've known this is coming for a long time because the US government is going to be subsidizing local miners to pump uranium out of the ground, so they're just going to give them cash. Peninsula Energy's limited subsidiary, Strata Energy Inc., and Energy Fuels have been awarded contracts to supply natural uranium concentrates to establish a U.S. Federal Reserve of domestically produced materials. So they're getting cash handed to them by the U.S. government. Talk about bullish fundamentals, right? Just easy money for these miners. The U.S. Strategic Uranium Reserve is alive. Peninsula Energy will supply 300,000 pounds of uranium at pricing above currently reported spot and term prices, reflecting the scarcity of U.S. origin materials in the uranium market. Why will the uranium price go up? Because there's a scarcity of it above ground. There's even scarcer amounts in the U.S., and these uranium miners are just going to make out extremely well when the government just pumps money into them. Then you have a revolutionary new technology, small modular reactor technology that's going to proliferate nuclear power all over the world. Oil major Shell to produce hydrogen using small nuclear stations. This is a massive energy company trying to diversify away from fossil fuels, right? Huge, investing in nuclear energy. Dominion Energy plans to deploy small modular nuclear reactors statewide by 2032 in Virginia. So this is the mass adoption of nuclear power. And so you also have activity in the large modular reactor space. First reactor vessel for Hinkley Point C completed. The manufacture of the reactor pressure vessel for the first 2 EPR units at the Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant under construction in Somerset, UK has been completed in France, and the large component is ready for delivery to the construction site. We've been covering how France is actually starting to get into the nuclear infrastructure game. And so they are shipping out, they're starting to ship it out. A large modular reactor prepares for shipping from its factory where it was made in controlled conditions like a small modular reactor, but with anywhere from 3 to 30x the electricity output. So these can be created and shipped anywhere that needs them. This is massive. Molten salt nuclear power barge to be developed. Bureau Veritas and nuclear power technology developer Thorcon have entered an agreement for the technology qualification and the subsequent development of a 500 megawatt molten salt nuclear power barge for operations in Indonesia. So they're going to be shipping these small modular reactors everywhere. And so let's go around the world covering the nuclear renaissance unfolding. Every week we have these headlines: $102 million government backing for nuclear and hydrogen innovation in the UK. And so here's where some of that UK money is going. Westinghouse receives UK government grant to explore uranium conversion services. Japan turns back to nuclear power to tackle energy crisis. We know this. South Korea's Yoon commits to big spending on nuclear power development. Korea is committing 400 billion won, $308 million a year to the development of small nuclear reactors as it doubles its overall annual spending on nuclear energy to 2 trillion won, according to the president. India to fire up nuclear power production in green shift. So this is the story. This is revolutionary technology. We're in the early stages of it. Obviously incredibly exciting.